Good to see you all here today. I want to extend a warm welcome to you. Everyone is welcome here. You're welcome here regardless of your age, your race, your income, your religion, or the gender with which you identify. You're welcome here regardless of who you love, who you vote for, the regrets that burden you, or the mistakes you have made. In this safe place, we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate this transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. Here we revere the words of the great teachers such as Jesus, the Buddha, and Confucius. It is, however, the task of every UU to be their own Buddha or their own Jesus. It is a cornerstone of our religion that each of us is the author of their own life experience, and through the practice of compassionate mind, we can heal our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and our planet. It is our work as a community to walk with each other along the spiritual pathways that lead towards happiness, compassion, and life fully lived. And while we are a safe harbor where there is solace and healing, we are also a launching pad from which we are propelled into the tumult of life to live courageously and justly and lovingly. In this sacred place, we create the structures that lift up the downtrodden, set the captives free, and heal the brokenhearted. Here we have learned that to be fully human is to be fully divine, and that with a little help from our friends, we can each tell our own unique story. So good morning, friends. It's good to see you all here today. I have a few comments to make. When I told my wife that we were going to take a look at the situation, the situation between Israel and Gaza, and really in the whole region, to talk about peace, she said, and I quote, "Well, you must be crazy then, because it's a very controversial kind of issue." And since my wife made that comment, I've been talking to more people about it, and there is a lot of different thought out there and a lot of passion around that situation. So when we're going to have Julia's going to speak, and Larry and Sandy are going to speak, I'd ask you to just be respectful of them and any kind of situation that you get in where you're discussing this out in the kitchen. Be respectful. Keep our first principle in mind, which is the inherent worth and dignity of all persons. And now it's time for the story for all ages. So would all the young people come up, please? And I fell down on the job. I was going to have some images to show, but I, for some reason, did not get them here, even though I thought I had. So, okay, guys, it's good to see you all here, looking so young and healthy. So, but no envy on my part. So today, well, first of all, I have some questions to ask you. Does anyone here ever feel like doing anything mean? Anything mean? Never? No. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Would you run the microphone, Harvey, please? We have a young man here who has admitted to feeling. What kind of things have you ever done anything mean?
In Spain, there's this baby. I hate her because she's so annoying. She's so upsetting.
Okay, well, thank you.
And he wants to hit her face. And when I get mad, I always want to hit my brother.
Yeah. Thank you. How about, has anyone ever lied here? Anybody ever lied? Anybody? Okay. I don't want you guys to take up all the bad stuff, okay?
When my friends have something I don't, well, I just say I have it. Sometimes.
Okay. So anyway, we all feel, are there any adults here who have never lied? Anybody adults here? Okay. Well, I guess I still need today to say the sermon then. So anyway, here's the deal. We all have dark moments when we want to do bad things to other people. And those dark moments when we want to do this bad thing to other people are called, I know. And this is in I think it's Yiddish. It's Yetzer Hara, and that's the part of us that wants to do something mean, wants to do something dark. And the reason I'm showing that is because we all have the experience of wanting to do that. And also, there's a part of us that's called Yetzer Hatav. Can you guys imagine what does this part of us want to do? Pardon me? He wants to be good. Yeah. So there's everybody has these two parts. And today I want to try to explain what these two parts have to do with why there is war and bad stuff in the world. And it's certainly a big part of it. It's not all of it, but it's a big part of it. So it turns out that when we're born, we have both this good part who wants to be good, and we have this part of ourselves that want to be bad, want to do destructive things. Now, it turns out that we need both parts of ourselves to be full and vital people. But here's the problem. When we grow up, what do our parents want us to be? Do our parents want to be this? No. Or do they want us to be this? Yes, they do. Okay, so here's what we do, and here's where all the problems begin. What we do is we take this part of ourselves, the part that is angry and hurtful and dark, and we hide it from ourselves. We hide it here, way back behind ourselves.
Interesting.
And thank you. Yeah. I'll talk to you later, buddy. Yeah, we hide it behind ourselves. And here's where the problem is. The problem is we forget not only where we hid it, we forget that we are that. So here's what happens. So when somebody does something we don't like out there, instead of saying, oh, I understand, I have compassion for that person, that we say, oh, I'm just going to put this part on somebody else. I'm going to put it on Harvey right there. Okay, Harvey, I'm going to put this on you. And I'm going to say, yes, Harvey, you do that very well. That I'm going to say that, oh, I'm a good person. I would never be like Harvey, who is mean and hateful and rageful. And you can see where that leads to a lot of bad stuff. And today we're going to be talking about war a little bit with the adults. Thank you, Harvey. That's the reason there are a lot of wars, because there's a lot of hate out there. People enjoy hating other people because they don't take responsibility for their own impulse to do damaging things. So anyway, that's really all I have today for you guys. So let's sing the kids out. Okay, thank you. Let's now move to our more adult section. And I've asked Larry and Sandy to share their perspectives on the Middle East. Once again, I remind you to be respectful, because I know there are different opinions here about what should be done there. And I'm sure that some folks are going to disagree with Sandy. And Julia Ryan will also share with us. Julia has lived in that region for a large portion of her life and has some thoughts on it. So Larry and Sandy, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it. And immediately after Larry and Sandy finish, Julia, if you come forward to the pulpit and speak, that would be great.
Thanks, Jim. I was thinking before coming on today how miserable I've been feeling about what's going on between Israel and Hamas, and how terrible I've been feeling for so many years about what's happening between Israel and the Palestinian people. But it felt good to know that I was coming to BUUF, coming to be with family, where even when we disagree with each other, we disagree respectfully, and we try to learn from one another. So we're glad to be here. I do have a lot of heavy heart feelings. This has been going on for so many years. And I started thinking back to 1993, when the head of Israel at the time, Yitzhak Rabin, and the head of the Palestinian organization, Yasser Arafat, came together in Oslo and worked out the beginnings of a peace accord. It wasn't perfect. Many people disagreed with it, but it was a start. And during that time, President Bill Clinton was the president in our country and was very helpful in bringing them together and helping them craft part one of the accord. And in 1995, they crafted part two of the accord. The two groups that were most opposed to these accords 30 years ago were Hamas, which had only been formed a few years before then, but Hamas was vehemently opposed to the Oslo Accords, and the extreme right in Israel, led by Benjamin Netanyahu. And here we are 30 years later, and Hamas and the Israeli government, now led by Benjamin Netanyahu, are waging this terrible war. I was shocked and disheartened and angry when Hamas did what it did to Israeli citizens, many of whom were young people. And I am shocked and disheartened and angry that the Israeli government is now doing what it is doing to the people of Gaza. There has to be a better way. I don't think there can be with the people who are currently in charge. I hope that once this war is over, the people in Israel will say no more of Netanyahu and his extreme government. And I hope the people of both Gaza and the West Bank will say no more of Hamas, and that a way can be found to talk about the issues that divide these folks, to find a way to compromise. And there's got to be compromise. If each group thinks that they are totally justified in what they are doing, and if each group thinks that they're the ones who are entitled to all of this land, and that the other group doesn't belong here and should be expelled or killed, it's never going to change. The makings of a peace accord are there. If people can simply pick up where the folks in 1993 and 1995 left off, the makings of a peace accord are present. But it's going to take a willingness to compromise and a willingness to do it without killing each other.
Not surprisingly, my feelings are closely aligned with Larry's. So much of what he said is resonant for me as well. When Larry said, oh, Jim asked if we could talk for 5 minutes about the crisis in the Middle East, I found myself thinking, oh my, that'll require at least 5 days. And yet there was another part of me that didn't want to immerse myself in it for 5 minutes. So I really understand what Vanessa was saying earlier today about the part of you that doesn't want to dive in and see the misery and the pain and the suffering of innocence. I really understand that. Part of what I wanted to share with you that I find disheartening is in the current devastating crisis, we've missed sight of the strength of the peace movement that's been working so hard, especially in recent years, that there have been thousands of Israelis marching in the streets against Netanyahu's far-right regime and pushing for his indictment and wanting him not to be the retaliatory hard-right extremist he is. And I don't want the work of those Israeli and Palestinian peace activists to go unnoted, as if nobody's trying to resolve this issue. And part of the tragedy of some of the videos that have been agonizing that we saw on October 7th is that those kibbutzim that bordered that part of Gaza were filled with Jewish peace activists of all ages. And they had a number of programs going, working jointly with Palestinians, a medical brigade that brought them in and out of Gaza to see specialists, a joint education program for the children. So to see that they were targeted and that we lost them is just devastating. And the other part that's haunting for me is that there are people that, as left-leaning to say the least, Jewish people, there are folks that we've marched with for gay rights and folks we've marched with for Black Lives Matter, and to have some of those spokespeople move swiftly from the brutality of October 7th to, by the next day, making statements like, well, this is to be expected given the oppressive Israeli regime, and then having professors across the United States, like the professor at Columbia that spoke at the pro-Palestinian rally and said he thought October 7th was awesome. That was his word. Another professor who spoke and said he was celebrating the victory in the streets. To know that there were thousands of people in Sydney, Australia, that were carrying banners that said, free Palestine, gas the Jews. The ADL is tracked as of last week. There was a 400% increase in anti-Semitic attacks across the world. It has a personal fear for us. Our son, Jeremy, who had 2 long courses of study in archaeology in Israel and made friends in Gaza, as well as had Israeli Jewish friends. He's the president of a congregation, Jewish Renewal Congregation in Santa Cruz, and he's a middle school teacher. And the Friday after October 7th, he had to leave his class early because he got a notice from the FBI that he had to arrange a police presence for his synagogue so that people would be safe Friday night going into Sabbath services. And again on Saturday, there was a nationwide alert because synagogues were targeted for the Palestinian Day of Rage. So this terrifying rise in anti-Semitism across the world, the devastating news about what's happening to innocent civilians in Gaza, it's very, very difficult to live with that much pain and that much consciousness. So I was glad Richard talked about our need to go to quiet places, our need to try to take a break from our hypervigilance. There's a wonderful book called Forest Bathing about how when we're overwhelmed with the pain of the world, we need to be in nature and let it wash over us so we can be at peace again. So I'm wishing for all of us that we find ways to keep our active voice alive and try to make a difference, but also take good care because these are difficult times.
Thank you, Larry and Judy, Larry and Sandy for sharing that with us. And now Julia will share her thoughts.
Well, I have to say that Larry and Sandy really expressed so much of the the same feelings I have about the history of what happened. On the day that Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, I wept because I knew what it meant. And I also agree that it's, the right leadership and Hamas that have been the problem. And I don't like to see all Palestinians identified as Hamas. There's a difference. There hasn't been an election there since, I believe it's 2006. People in Palestine have not had the opportunity to elect their own leaders, and Hamas actually took control of all the resources. So they became, very necessary, the schools and the hospitals and so on. My personal history, I feel compassion for everybody. And my personal history, is worth mentioning because it gives me a really broad worldview. I grew up all over the world. I'm English, but I ended up being born in Austria not that long after the end of the war. My mother was in Athens, occupied by the Germans. From the ages of 10 to 13, I lived in South Africa under apartheid. Then from ages 14 to 16, I lived in Beirut, and the 6-Day War happened. And I was at boarding school at the time, but my parents were there, and it was absolutely terrifying for me. And when I came home, there were tanks up and down the waterfront. And then we lived in Kenya under 5 years after liberation from the British. And then I lived in Amman, Jordan in my early 20s. And then through the rest of my 20s, I lived in Athens, Greece under the junta and saw the overthrow of the junta. So I've, personally witnessed being in the midst of a lot of controversial situations created by colonialism and politics, and which has caused me to think a good deal about those topics. And I have a friend, well, first let me say, living in the Middle East, like anywhere else, the people there were wonderful. The people of Lebanon, the people of Jordan were hospitable, loving. I had hostesses almost in tears if I wouldn't eat enough of the food they'd prepared. And, I felt so welcomed by everybody. So I just want to put a human face on all that. And, I also have and I was lucky enough where my father showed us everything everywhere. So, we went to Jerusalem before it was, when it was still divided. This has all been incredibly painful for me too. I mean, I'm sure it's painful for everybody. And I really concur with what has been said in terms of the politics of the situation. And my only way to deal with it, I just was in such utter horror about everything that was happening to everybody. I have a Jewish friend who went out there for the protests, and ended up helping Israelis, and then was in Palestine helping Palestinians. You know, she was one of those activists, you know, who was trying to bring people together. And I don't know if she's dead or alive right now. But my only way to deal with this, she's part of my Buddhist group, you know, has really been, you know, I feel like there's nothing I can do but pray, and being a Buddhist practitioner, send out loving kindness, meditations and energy in that direction. And I have the same hopes as those who spoke before me had. And I'm very glad to be in this safe space where I'm sure that everybody feels much the same as I do. So thank you for, you know, I feel like Unitarian Universalism is on top of this kind of thing, right? I pray for peace.
Thank you, Julia, Larry, and Sandy for sharing your perspectives with us. I see we are drawing to the witching hour here, I guess. So I'm going to do a quick run through of what I had to say. First of all, the concepts that I'm going to be sharing today are not the concept, but the sermon is based on Buddhist teachings, 3 of them, actually. Peace is not something you will find by rearranging your outer circumstances the outer circumstances of your life. Peace comes from realizing who you are. Number 2, when you have peace, it affects everything and everybody. In other words, when you have peace, it also affects what's happening in the Middle East and everywhere. So working for peace within yourself is a very important endeavor. And you can give peace away by practicing compassion and loving kindness, which is what Julia just said. And also, the sermon I was going to preach borrows from Christian imagery. As you know, it's my particular belief that while the old religions really can't be conceived of as factual anymore, that they actually can be very useful in understanding ourselves. And so I was going to use the cross, the tomb, and resurrection as a way of understanding how to get from on peace to peace, and that suffering is involved along the way. So recently a friend of mine sent me a copy of a daily column that political pundit Bill O'Reilly puts out. I like Bill. He seems to have a nice personality. Sometimes, or occasionally, I even agree with him. In a column he published on October 27th, titled Rejecting Hate, Bill's opening statement reads, "The roots of bigotry are buried in ignorance. No human being is born hating anyone." And I have to say that I agree very strongly with that. Then Bill goes on to describe people who hate as unreasonable, ignorant, foolish, evil, ridiculous people. Who are the haters? And I got to thinking to myself, Bill, you kind of spent your column hating on haters, which kind of defeats the purpose of what you were trying to do. But at any rate, jumping ahead, hate is the big problem in my mind that we face. I think it's the #1 addiction in the U.S. I think I read that 75,000 people died last year of some kind of addiction to drugs. But I'm pretty sure that hate is much, much more deadly in addiction to hate. If you don't believe me, listen to MSNBC or Fox News or some of those folks, because pretty much that's what they're peddling, is hate. So let's visit the cross, the tomb, and the and resurrection when the stone is rolled away. Now, yeah, I don't consider those to be factual events, but I do consider them to be very important landmarks in anybody's spiritual growth, because as I said earlier, we do hide that difficult part of ourselves away. You know, society wants us to be nice people. You know, we want to be nice people. They want us to do good things and think good thoughts. So all those dark thoughts that everybody has, and we all have them, get hidden away. They get hidden away, and because they cause us anxiety, we just plain forget about them until, of course, someone comes along like the Israelis, or the Democrats, or the Republicans, or Putin, or Stalin, or just somebody, your boss, and all those feelings get dumped right on to that person. So we hate that person. So the way, so Bill, the title of Bill's sermon was Rejecting Hate. And I'm just saying that rejecting hate does not work. When hate comes to you, it's my suggestion that you keep it. And that's the cross part of the metaphor. We keep the hate, which is very uncomfortable to keep within us, and we suffer. And then we go to the tomb, or we take that long journey in the wilderness with Moses, or we spend some time in the belly of the whale. It's a time of darkness, but that is the time of transformation, when the hateful energies, or the dark energies that you've not acknowledged come to you full force. And something about the human spirit, I think it's the light of consciousness, transforms transforms these energies into something useful. Like, for instance, I don't think, I've said it many times before, that we would have a sense of humor if it were not for the darkness that we carry around in us. So I'm going through here very quickly. I have made a list of things that are helpful in not pouring your hate out into the world and becoming a peaceful person. Become a dropout from the current culture wars that have taken over our country. They incite us to hate and violence. Seek out and have conversations with those folks that disagree with you. It is a good way to practice compassion and learning to understand where others are coming from. Learn to hear others' truth, even if it sounds crazy to you. Did anyone have someone in their lives who sound crazy to them? Okay. Never try to change minds. Just find out where their minds are. Keep in mind that for many, the culture wars are so intense that the other may have the notion that you are crazy and delusional for holding your particular views. Does anyone have anyone in their lives who thinks you're crazy and delusional? Okay. Yeah, Jeff, we need to talk. Change your doctrine of humanity. One of the most difficult and most fallacious things in life is that the world is divided into two kinds of people. There are good people and there are bad people, and the good people need to defeat the bad people if we're going to make things good again. Well, that's not a good doctrine, and it's not the doctrine. Our doctrine is the inherent worth and dignity of every person, which is realizing that every person, you and me included, are capable of great good and great harm. We can build up and we can tear down. And learn how to tell your truth without frightening other people. Be humble. Tell the truth, which is your way of being in the world sustains you, is enjoyable for you. I have a couple friends who taught philosophy, and I meet with them on Tuesdays along with other people in my Tuesday talkers, and they're very good about helping me to get to the point where I don't have any more answers. But my final answer is always, well, I choose to be religious. I choose to believe this because I get the most enjoyment out of it, and it is the most helpful for me. So that answer seems to stymie them a little bit, but you can't argue it. I mean, how can you argue with someone else's enjoyment? And this is very important. Do not shy away from the suffering that soul work requires. Soul work, which is what I'm talking about here, the work of transforming darkness into the energies of light, is soul work, and it's what we do by shining the light of consciousness on ourselves, on our interior being. And it does make the world, I think, a better place, certainly for you and certainly for me and others. So, so as far as Israel and Hamas are concerned, it does no good to assign blame, to rehearse who has committed the greatest atrocities, or to look back in history to determine who is right and who is wrong. The only path to peace in the Middle East or anywhere else is through the human heart and the transforming and creative elements of the human spirit. It boils down to a simple choice. What do you want to give to the world? Do you want to give away hatred, violence, and strife? Or do you want to give away peace? If you do choose peace, personal suffering is required. And now let's go to our final hymn.